Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining me for this webinar session about a product that we're really excited about called KDocs Approve. So, in this session, I just want to give you a little bit on the background and introduction um, behind this product and what purpose it serves. Then we'll go on to talk about how to deploy the solution package, where you can download it from, etc. But the main thrust of this session is going to be giving you a walkthrough demonstration as to how to install the app, configure a document library, a SharePoint document library to use the solution, and then give you a demonstration as to how it can be used from an end user's perspective. Then at the end, we can talk about licensing. It's a freemium product. It's a fully functional product. You can just download it and use it. But there are advantages and advanced features that can be enabled if you choose to invest and become a license paid customer. Okay, for as purposes of introduction, my name's Colin Gardner. I'm the chief and bottle washer at Kaboodle Software. I've been working in SharePoint since 2001, so a long time. Kaboodle Software has been up and running since 2012. This product, KDocs Approve, has been a year in the making, and it's grown out of the recognition with many of our customers for the fact that when you have the approval processes involved on what we call control documents, so policies, procedures, SOPs, form templates, and the like, that what Microsoft gives us out of the box in terms of SharePoint, that simple two-step approval process, is in most cases just not adequate for what organizations need to demonstrate to auditors and to implement a properly governed system. Now, normally, if you brought in a consultant to say, we've got to have an approvals process over the top of our control documents, the first thing that they would do is they'd reach for Power Automate, and indeed that's what we used to do. But having done this with, I've lost count of the number of customers, we've come to the realization that actually Power Automate is not the best tool for doing this. Now, don't get me wrong, Power Automate's a completely awesome and magical piece of software, but it's essentially a sequential workflow engine. And so it works really well when the process is really clearly defined and you have clear steps and there's very few exceptions. And normally you go from the start to the end point without having to, go and rework many of the issues. The problem is that doesn't sit well when you're talking about approval cycles for documents, where changes to documents tend to bob around between key stakeholders, reviewers, quality controllers, and those who are actually going to approve and sign off on those documents. And it's a very collaborative process. And for that sort of management of that sort of process, you really need a state machine workflow. And unfortunately, if you try and build a state machine workflow in Power Automate, it ends up in a really complex mess that's really difficult to manage or govern. I'd just like to call out, some of our most valued customers who've been working with us on the development of this solution. In particular, this whole project was kicked off with an initiative with Yalumba Wines, but since then we've installed this solution in several organisations, and some of the key early adopters have been they've been outstanding and given us feedback, finding issues, bugs that need to be fixed with it as well. So, in particular, I'd like to call out Boss Energy, Flinders Ports, and My Plan Manager for all of the great feedback and response that they've provided us. We are really excited that this product is on the verge of being released. It's already been submitted to the App Store. We've got one or two little tweaks that we need to do, but hopefully it'll be in the App Store before the end of this month. So, deploying and installing KDocs, well, first of all, you've got to download the solution package. It's available from our product website now at that URL. And as I've said, it's soon going to be available from the Microsoft Marketplace and the App Source. It's a very simple solution in that it consists of only one SharePoint solution package, and that can be deployed either to the global app catalog or to a site collection app catalog. And it's 100% SharePoint framework solution, so no add-ins. So it's going to be it's adopting Microsoft's preferred method for extending SharePoint solutions, and it requires no external APIs. In fact, absolutely zero data leaves your organization. Everything is totally within your tenancy. There's no call outs to external APIs or anything like that. And we don't, in fact, even use the Graph API, which is a bonus because this means that this solution can actually be deployed without having to get approval from a tenancy global administrator. By design, we have made this solution so that it cannot be globally deployed. So what that means is that you're going to have to install it on each of the sites where the application is actually needed. We did that by design because we felt as though most organizations wouldn't want to have this capability available on all sites. They would only want to be using it on a few select sites. Detailed guidance on how to install and configure this application can be found and downloaded from the product site as well. So I'm going to cut through to the demonstration in just a moment. What I'm going to talk about is basically how to add the app to the site. That's very simple, just like how you would add every other app to the site. And then what I'll do is I'll talk through how we can configure a source document library to use the solution, and then a demo as to how it works from an end user's perspective. So with that, we'll cut over to the demo. So let's move forward with the demonstration. So what I've got here is a brand new site that I've just set up. I've configured it with one additional document library, which I've called controlled documents. It's been had some sample documents loaded up, just nine of them for us to get working with. Now, the idea is what we're going to do is we're going to install and configure KDocs Approve so that we have a formal, more rigorous approval process on this control documents library. But the first thing that we've got to do is that we've got to install the app because it's not deployed or installed on a site by default. So as a site administrator or owner or somebody with design level permissions, I can just go and add the app. And then from the apps you can add page, you can see that there's a list available. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to install KDocs Approve. It takes a few seconds for that to whirl through the system, and then it should return me back to the site contents page, or I can click to go back to the site contents page. Might be grayed out initially, but in this case, it's all good to go. Now, the one thing about this controlled documents library is that it's this library here is that for KDocs to be used, we need to just double check on the library settings to make sure that the version settings are set up properly, because the library must support content approval, so that must be set to yes, and it must also be set to for major and minor versioning. And I also recommend that probably in most cases you will want it so that we have draft item security, so that people who've got edit level permissions can see draft documents. So if those are all good to go, that's absolutely fine. And what you'll find is that if you're logged on as a site owner, somebody who's got permissions on this library, owner level permissions on this library, you'll find that the user interface for the library has been extended with this configuration approvals panel. And this allows us actually to now configure this library to use KDocs Approve. So if we click on this button, what will happen is that a side panel will now pop up, and this will allow you to configure the control documents library for KDocs Approve. It may look complicated, but really what we're going to be doing will only take a few minutes, 10 minutes at the most, and we'll just be working top to bottom to set this library up. So the first thing that we've got to do is we've got to add an approvals routes list. And I'm just going to click this button to do this. And the UI will let you know that this approval routes list has been created. If I go into the site contents, you'll see that the approval routes list now exists in the site contents. There's nothing in it, but if I open this up and access the list, you can begin to see how this works. So the idea is that we can create approval route items which identify users. These are multi-column, multi-value user columns, and they represent roles within the system. So users can be assigned as editors, reviewers, quality controllers, or approvers. Now, KDOT's approve is very flexible in that if you don't have or users assigned to one of these roles, then it will just skip over that process and it will figure out that that part of the process for this particular approval route is not actually required. Let's go back to our control panel. The next thing that we've got to do is that we've got to add some columns to our SharePoint library. And again, this looks more complex than it really is, but if I look at the required columns, there's 3 essential columns that must be added to the library. The first one is a multi-line, it's a hidden multi-line text column, and this holds all of the approval data, including all the history of when a document was edited, by who it was approved by, who signed off for the quality control, etc., etc. And because this is a state machine, we also have 2, excuse me, we still have 2 columns, one that stores the current state of the process, and the other one which actually stores the status of the current step. So, for example, the current step might be, you know, pending review, and the status could be rejected, or it could be approved or pending approval, etc., etc. So I'm just going to ensure these columns, and the UI will update and will tell me that these columns have now been created. In the release date column, we've got the option to add a release date, and this is really useful because what SharePoint doesn't do natively out of the box is that when a document has been approved as a major published version, it doesn't actually externally store that date anywhere. It does store it in version history, but what we really would want it to do is to store that out into a list column somewhere, a library column, so that we can then use that when the document was last published as a date to drive when it would next be required for review. So there are some advanced options here. Check the documentation. If you're using this with an existing library and you've already got a column for this purpose, you can actually map to an existing column. But I'm just going to add this new release date column, and then we're good to go. The next ones are to do if you actually want to externalize the users who are involved in the process. So if you actually want to externally record as explicit values in SharePoint and the library, who and when a document was approved by, who completed the quality control check, etc., etc. Now, most of the time you won't actually need this because this data is also stored internally within that multi-line text field as part of the version history. But there may be occasions when you actually want to externalize those properties, and you can do that. The one column that I would recommend that you add in this section is the pending next action, because what happens then is this will actually automatically get assigned to the users. It will automatically add the users who are next up. So, for example, if a document has been submitted for quality control, it will look to see who in the approvals route has been assigned that quality control role, and then it will add them to this pending actions user column. Now, this is really useful because if you set up a view which is filtered on the me property, then what you can do is set things up so that whenever a user comes to the source library, they can actually see a list of all the actions which are pending against them. So I'm going to just add this column, and that's the only one that we need there. The next one is the um, tracking for next review. There are a number of different options here. I'm going to go with the most flexible one, which is basically what we'll do is we'll set up as a calculated value, which will be when the document is next due for review. And the review period will be the number of days between when it was last reviewed and when it is next due for review. And that could be set on the individual document level. So it could be 365 if you want this document to be reviewed on an annual basis. But with this most flexible of options, you've also got the ability to set an explicit specific review date. And if a user sets a specific review date in a column, then that's going to trump the default calculated value. So I'm going to just add all of these columns, and then we're good to go. And then the final thing is that this is something to do with a really cool feature that KDocs Approve does, is that if you imagine that this library here is in what I call a below the line space, in other words, it's a collaborative working area for just the stakeholders who are involved in this approval process. What you might actually want to do is not have consumers, i.e. the users of your policies and procedures. You might not want to grant them access to this library. So we built in a feature to KDocs Approve whereby when a document has been published as a major version, we can actually create a rendition, a managed copy of that document, and push it elsewhere in your organization. And at that same time, we can also convert that rendition to PDF. So this is really useful, for example, if you have an update to a policy or a procedure, and actually you don't want the users to work or even consume these documents in their Word format, but instead what you want to do is to push the latest approved version, let's say up to your corporate intranet, as a PDF. In a manual system, this is a multi-step process. You've got to download the document, you've got to convert it to PDF, you've got to upload the document, and then you've got to manually synchronize all of the metadata. We take care of all of that so that whole process is completely automated. However, there may be occasions when some documents you don't actually want to have automatically published, in which case, or automatically converted to PDF, in which case these two columns can be useful because they're just simple yes/no columns which allow you to specify, put a flag on specific documents and say, don't convert this one to PDF or don't automatically publish this one to the above the line space. And that's pretty much it. We're all set with our libraries that have been created. We might want to do is that we might want to create some site groups. And what we would recommend is that actually you do create site groups, and we probably don't need them for consumers if we're going to have this model whereby the consuming users actually don't have access to their site at all, and that what we're really going to strive towards is to push the PDF renditions to the above the line space. But you can see that in the UI, we have this option of creating a SharePoint group for each of the roles that we might want to have associated with this. Now, obviously, if we're going to simplify the approval process and we're going to combine, let's say, the reviewers and the quality controllers into one role, then we might not need all of these groups. This is just a convenient shortcut for what you can do in the SharePoint UI. So you could just go through and create these groups manually, but this is just a convenient shortcut. And by clicking all of these, we've successfully added up those groups. Now, when it comes to setting up the approval routes, and that's what we're going to do now, we would recommend that you actually assign users into SharePoint groups and then SharePoint groups into the roles within an approval route. So at the moment, we don't actually have an approval route for the library, and that's the purpose of this button here. the roots and permissions. So here's my control document, and this UI is telling me that this document, this library, is currently inheriting the permissions from the site. That's what that little padlock's telling me. And because it hasn't got anything in brackets behind it, I basically don't have an approval route. So what I can do is I can create a new approval route for this particular library. And I'm just going to call it the same thing, controlled documents. And then I'm just going to add this. And when I add this dialog will close down, and I've now got a link to my controlled documents library. Sorry, my I've got a link to my newly created approval route. If I actually click on this, it'll open up the approval route item, and I can actually add my users here, controlled document editors, and then I can say controlled document reviewers, etc., etc. Here you can see I've finished assigning users, Zoe, Edna, etc., to the various roles, and I've actually saved that list item there. If I go back to this dialog, I need to be careful to make sure that I've actually closed this down, because otherwise that information might not be held in sync. So I just need to refresh the page and make sure that that dialog's open. Can you see that it's got this little um, out of sync dialog, out of sync message button here? This is basically telling me that the approvals for this particular um, route are not in sync with the permissions that's been currently assigned to this library. So if I want to synchronize the permissions, all I need to do is to click on that button, and then in a few clicks, I can see that the permissions that are actually assigned to the library are as per what was required by the approval route. So if your approval route does actually get out of sync with the permissions that are on the library, this is a handy and convenient way for you to actually be able to check that those permissions are good to go. So making huge progress. So far what we've done is we configured the library, we've set up some SharePoint groups, we've created an approval route for the library, and we've made sure that the permissions are all in sync with the users who've been assigned to the different roles. The next thing that we're going to do is that we're going to create another list on the library for notifications. So what we want is that we want KDocs approved to send out email notifications when key events happen in the system. And that's what this button does here. So if I just close this down, go back to site settings, site content rather, and you'll see that there's been a new list that's been added now called KDocs approval template. Both of these you can rename, by the way. You can rename them to anything that you want. However, unlike the approvals route, which was initially created empty, this one has actually got 10 message templates in here. And these are think of these as the templates that are going to be used when users interact with the system. And so they're things like when a document has been submitted, or when a document has been approved, or when a document has been rejected. Now, these emails are customizable, and the supporting documentation allows you to identify or lists out the tokens that you can put into both the header message body of these emails, and you can also customize them with your own branding or whatever in your own terminology. So it's a pretty flexible arrangement. But if we go back to configuring our document library and back to the configure approvals, we can just start out with the out-of-the-box notifications, and that'll be just fine. If you're using a non-premium version, so licensed paid version, you have access to this dialog box. It's not available if you're just using the freemium version. And what this will allow you to do is that this will allow you to set up custom names for your different states and also for the different actions, etc., etc. I'm just going to stay with the out of the box ones as it is. You can control the button text as well. But if you really want to customize your process to be perfectly aligned using the terminology of your specific business processes, this is where you would do it. You'd come in here and you would customize the roles and the states. But I'm just going to stick with the out of the box ones. Getting close to the end now. Next, I'm just going to add an approvals button, and the approvals button is just a field customizer extension, and if I go and add a new columns to the list or show and hide the columns which are available into the list, um, there's an approvals button option here, and I can just add that to the library. And it might take a few seconds for this to actually load, because the first time it's got to be connected with the field customizer. So it sometimes takes a minute or two for this to kick in. Let's just give it another refresh. Okay, there we go. So these are the approvals button, and none of these are showing as being published because they're all sitting as minor versions. So none of them have actually been published as yet. So we're nearly there with our process. Let's just finish off the approvals configuration. The last thing that we're going to do is we're going to set this up to support a managed publishing, so this automatic publishing above the line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a publishing configuration, and I've got a site up here called the document registry, and so I'm just going to give this a title, if I could spell, and I'm going to select the site, and I'm going to send this to the document registry, and then I'm going to pick the library in which this is actually going to go. I can also channel this publishing to a specific folder if I want to. I'm going to convert these documents to PDF, and if you wanted to, you can append a file name extension when you actually publish these documents, which might actually be the version number, the date, or a timestamp, etc. But in most cases, you won't need that, because what you would actually want is a consistent file name in the above the line site. So what will actually happen is that when this document is published as a PDF, the same file name that's used below the line will be used above the line. And if you republish a document, it'll automatically replace the PDF rendition. So as long as you keep the file names the same, the rent and the location the same that you're publishing to, then that's all going to be fine. Now you've got some options here to map the content type and also to map metadata, which you probably will want in most cases. Just bear in mind that this capability is only available for users who have a. It's not available for freemium users, but it is available if you've got a paid license. So that's pretty much it. We're pretty much good to go. Our library is all set up, and so the next thing that we need to do is to give you a bit of a demo from a user's perspective. Okay, so our document library is now all set up. The easiest way to access the approvals button for a library is just to click on, the approvals panel is just to click on the approvals button, and then that panel pops up. We'll come on back to that in a second, but you do also have the option of going to the command bar button, and you can open up from here, or even from the a button down here, and you can select the approvals option. whichever way you choose, you end up with the approvals panel. So at the top here, what we've got is we've got the document control, and this will allow you to actually open up the document in the app or even download it if you want to. So this is just providing some information about the current document that's in focus. You can see that it's currently not published. It's not pending any status of evaluation, and the control route, approval route that's assigned to this document is called control documents, the one that we've just set up. I can see that this currently is sitting with the editors, and that is Zoe Watson. I can also see who's going to be assigned to each of these individual roles. Content approver, quality controller is Bill, and I'm sitting there as an approver. So what would happen is that me as an editor, I would be editing this document. I'm going to be playing all of the hats here, but of course this would be Zoe and one of the others who would be doing this. And when they're ready, what can happen is that they can then submit this document for content review. So when that happens, they close down the dialogue, and you can see that this button has now changed its status, and it's now sitting in the content review state. If I open up this panel again, you can see that this has been advanced. So um, the editing has been completed by myself, and I've then done this, submitted this for content review. So what's actually happened is that behind the scenes, the next stakeholders involved, who are Edna and Charles, they will have been sent notification emails with an embedded code link within that email, which will take them straight to this document and will actually open up this panel ready for them to do their review and their work. They could add whatever comment. Great work, Colin. Thank you. And they can submit and add comments as they go. And when they do that, these comments are going to then be added up into the what amounts to the record of the entire approval cycle. In this case, approval cycle 1. Now, because this comment was edited by me, I'm actually able to edit these comments, but you can only edit your own comments. When an approval cycle is complete, the comments for that approval cycle are locked out and nobody can edit them from there on. Now, rather than just keep these panels closing down and me reopening them, there's a shortcut which will allow me to keep these panels open, and that's what I'm going to be just doing here. Normally, this is only available for owners of the site, but it's useful sometimes if you're doing and testing purposes. And I can always also switch off email notifications, so I can suppress those email notifications going out. So what I'm going to do now is just to click and show you what happens as we go through the entire process. So this is now advanced to content review. Again, it's been completed by me, but in the real world, it wouldn't be. Normally, if that hadn't been checked, Bill would have got an email saying, "Hey, Bill, you're next up for quality review on this document." I'm now going to submit this for final approval. So I'm really sending it to myself. But this is the last stage in the cycle. And what's going to happen now is that I'm going to send this to final review. And this takes a little bit longer because if you remember, we've got automated publishing going on. And so what's actually happened is that the first revision cycle for this document has now been completed. The document's sitting at version 1, and that document has automatically been published in the above the line site, and we'll go there in just a second. So I'm just going to close that down and refresh the screen, and you'll see that this document has now been declared as published. And if I change some of these columns in this, I can actually show and hide, and I'll just bring in the release date. and the next review date. And I'll maybe just switch off the business function, business unit, and this, just so we've got a little bit more room to play with. You can. So what I've just realised is that because we didn't have any values in the next review period, the value that would have been shown in the next review date, if that was zero or didn't have a property set, that wouldn't actually show the next review date. But that's all cool. It just means that I can show you one of the other cool features that we've got about KDocs Approve is that I can actually do an admin quick publish with this particular document. And that's what this symbol is around here. So this will allow me to administratively quick publish this document, skipping all of that approval process. And normally, of course, you'd only want this capability to be available for um, site administrator or administrators of the a process. So you can see that this is now being published, and the next version is at version 2. And of course, if I go through all of these processes, I can pretty much set them to whichever state that there was. Now, if I go and look at the document registry, at the moment that's completely empty. But if I refresh the screen, you can see that my document that I've just published a few seconds ago has actually been converted to PDF, and you can see that the metadata that I've assigned to it in the below the line has all been pushed up. So this is where the users can actually come to consume, can actually come to access and consume these documents. And here is I've configured the below the line site. I've published a few documents and advanced them through the status. And I've also added the review column, which is another field customizer. And that basically provides a status indicator which shows the status of the documents, whether they're due this month, next week, whether they're in date, or indeed whether they're overdue. And so that provides a very easy and simple visual indicator to help users identify when products are requiring their attention. Okay, so I think that's probably enough in terms of what we can do for a quick demo. Let me cut back over to the slides. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about our product philosophy and our approach when it comes to licensing. So some of the Kaboodle products are completely free. You just download them, no need to register, you can just use them. But most of the ones that add true value, we offer as freemium products, or we use a freemium model. And what that basically means is that they are completely full on functional working applications, and they offer great features, and there are absolutely no cost to you. You don't even have to register them, you can just download and use them. However, we've got to get some money out of our investment somehow. And so what we've done is that we've disabled some of the more advanced features, and we've also, on the freemium version, we've also added a little bit of Kaboodle branding. It's quite subtle, so most customers might be able to live with that branding. But the idea is that we offer some of the advanced features, but they're only unlocked or only available for licensed users. Um, you can try out the advanced features just by going to our website and requesting a free trial. That process is completely automated, so literally within 5 minutes you can be up and running with a free trial. Just bear in mind that the trial license is not tied to a specific product, and so it works across all of our products. It will expire after 30 days, but if you need longer, or there's a gap between when you want to trial a different product, then that's absolutely fine. Just let us know, and we create an extension to your trial license. So if you do opt for a license paid option, you'll find that our prices are incredibly affordable. We're not here to rip you off of money. We just love these products. We're hoping that you will find use for them in improving your productivity. Um, but we do charge a license fee, and it's based on the number of active users that you've got in your tenancy. And by that, what I mean is users that have been assigned an M365 license of some kind. Um, the license fee for non-freemium is annual, reoccurring, and we take it on trust that when you fill out the license form that we give you access to, that you provide an accurate number of users. If we actually discover, we think that you're sort of like pulling the wool over our eyes and trying to do a quick one, we actually have the ability to switch off your license, including your freemium license, so the products won't actually work. But we believe that most customers will play fair with us, and that they will give us an accurate indication of the number of license users that they've got. We do also offer a discount for government and non-for-profit, so you get 10% off if your organisation falls into that category. So for this particular product, you would want to know what the freemium limitations are. So I kind of mentioned them as we went through the demonstration, but just to summarize them here. If you're a freemium product, you can't customize any of the states, the role names, or the button text. So you just get what we give you out of the box. Um, and that might be fine for most cases. In fact, most of our customers who've been along this journey, in fact, only a couple of them, our early adopters have actually opted for to customize the user interface in this way. Um, I guess probably the main restriction with the freemium option is that remote publishing and that automated conversion to PDF that I demonstrated to you, that's actually disabled. So that's a premium function that we think adds considerable value. So that's why we offer it as a premium feature. Um, there is also no quick admin approval. So in the demo, I showed you how we could quickly sort of like sidestep the formal process, and that might be useful if you just somebody spots a typo or something, and you don't want to send the document around the whole process. So with the full product, there is that admin quick approval part. There is some branding and iconography that goes on in the user interface if you're a freemium product. But the main piece of branding is that the notification emails all have a Kaboodle footer. So all of that goes away if you become a paid and licensed user. So how much does it cost? Well, as I said, the costs are based on the number of active users. It's a recurring annual fee, 10% discount. You can actually go to our website and get a free online quote in Australian, American, New Zealand dollars, euros, or UK pounds. And basically, what you do is you just select the product or the product group. There's discounts to be had if you bundle. So KDocs Approve is part of a wider family called KDocs, and that includes KDocs Published, KDocs Acknowledge, and KView, KDocs KView. And if you want to buy all four of those in that family, you basically get four products for the price of two. So there's definitely value to be had. You can pay online by secure credit card payment, or you can do international or national bank transfer if you're in Australia. We'll happily send you out a quote, an invoice. But as I say, you can actually self-generate a quote from our site online. In any case, it just takes a couple of minutes. Um, Price for this particular product, if you can believe it, starts out for a small organization, micro organization, actually, for as little as $512 a year. But it actually caps out at just over $2,500 if you're an enterprise organization. And what we call an enterprise organization is one that has over 250 employees. So if you've got 5,000 employees or 10,000 employees, you won't pay any more than the maximum that we charge for an enterprise license, which is 2,560. As I say, you will pay more if you want to go for more products and bundle them together, but that's actually a way to save money overall. So that brings us to the end. I'll just say thank you for watching this. If you have any questions, or you want to follow up with a personal meeting with me so that I can talk you through and give you a personalized demonstration or talk about some of the other key features which we haven't had time to go into today, that's fine. Just reach out to me at colin@kaboodle.software, or you can contact us through our website and the contact form. And for more information about how KDocs works, please check out the Kaboodle software blog. I've been putting up a few posts quite recently about our rationale and our understanding for and the logic behind, and explaining how all of this application works. Well, I hope you enjoyed this session, and if we can be of further assistance to you, then please do reach out. Thank you for your time, and thanks for listening.